Hello, and in true television award ceremony style, Jacky, Collins and I are sorry we can't be with you in person today, but our presentation focuses on the spectacularly disruptive and queer costuming of Villanelle in the award-winning BBC television series Killing Eve. As a multi-generic hybrid, Killing Eve combines elements of the spy thriller and crime drama with a liberal splash of black comedy. With 3 seasons to date, the programme centres upon the mutual obsession between investigator Eve, played by Sandra Oh, and Jodie Comer's deadly assassin Villanelle. Killing Eve has beguiled critics, journalists and fans with its representation of possibly the most fashion-forward killer to grace television screens in recent years. The series encapsulates the tensions within screen costuming between storytelling and spectacle, costume design and fashion on and off the screen. Villanelle's costumes do not simply construct her character. The costumes are intrusive, disruptive, and dominate the scene through their colour, pattern, and tailoring. Her costuming operates in a similar way to that of fashion in Sex and the City, which, as Stella Brutzzi and Pamela Church-Gibson have argued, functions as a character in its own right. Through costuming, a multiplicity of chameleon-like characters dominates the screen, ever shifting to enable the seemingly effortless transformation and performance of identities. There may be iconic signature fashion moments in Killing Eve, but there is certainly not a stable, consistent, stylish image of Villanelle. She exists simply as surface, seemingly without depth, empathy, or emotion. Her clothes speak loudly, exerting power and agency. As interesting as these lavish garments are, rather than centering our analysis today upon Villanelle's brightly coloured, stereotypically feminine fashion-centric costumes, we wish to focus firstly on a comparative analysis of how Villanelle's queer costuming intersects with and diverges from iconic queer appropriations of masculine attire. And then we will focus on how pockets, together with fabric and cut, function to self-consciously both queer and render Villanelle safe from being read as yet another stereotype of the lesbian killer as mad, bad and dangerous to know.
Whilst the premise of this presentation is to consider the impact of Villanelle's queered costuming, such costuming is not groundbreaking, as we will demonstrate with reference to a number of significant precursors. Our first examples of trouser-wearing uber femmes can be found in the legendary film icons Marlene Dietrich and Greta Garbo, who, quoting Gundel, sought to confound conventional expectations of elegant clothing. Perhaps the most celebrated aspect of Dietrich's style was her use of classic menswear, in particular, the tailored three-piece suits that served to create a distinctly androgynous look, helping to revolutionize and redefine women's fashion, but also offering a reference point to the women-loving women of the 1930s. As Brutzzi has discussed, Dietrich became, and I quote, the point of multiple erotic identification as the embodiment of fluctuating, unrestrained desire. However, in contrast, Dietrich also had a fondness for all things looks. Adorned in Travis Banton's exquisite, sumptuous and theatrical costume designs, Dietrich wore pencil skirts, form-fitting dresses and silky blouses that captured the essence of Hollywood glamour. Similarly, at a time when ladylike gowns and skirts were in vogue, Garbo was famous for her signature masculine clothing, characterized by clean lines and tailored looks. Hollywood costume designer Adrian added greatly to Garbo's androgynous allure with his elaborate work for films such as Queen Christina. While she appeared on the silver screen in glittering gowns, her signature off-screen look rejected the dominant codes of femininity as she opted for slacks, men's-style shirts, tailored jackets and flats. What made Garbo such an original was actually a very simple concept. She insisted on practicality and comfort. Whilst privileged screen icons were able to play with dominant dress codes, and in doing so create an air of mystery and allure about their persona, such subversion in real life invariably carried with it the weight of stigma and rejection, often from within the lesbian community itself. When analysing these attitudes, Elizabeth A. Smith explains, and I quote, "What is clear is that butch femme was a system of sexual communication carried out in dress, in style and in more sexual ways. This dichotomy also carried a marked class connection, that of being working class, with middle-class lesbians preferring to eschew this opposition. And such attitudes were perhaps best captured in the characterizations in the 1968 lesbian classic, The Killing of Sister George, with scenes shot on location in London's Gateways nightclub, one of the few places in the UK where lesbians could meet openly during the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Towards the end of the 20th century, a note of glamour and perhaps even mainstream approval was afforded this construct with the rise of lesbian chic and the lipstick lesbian, epitomized in the iconic 1993 Katie Lang and Cindy Crawford shoot for Vanity Fair. The positive reception of this disruptive yet palatable butch femme image can be best explained by Kelly L. Reddy Best and Katie Baker Jones, who observed that, and I quote, "According to the press, while lesbians have been chic since the 1990s, whether they embraced a butch or a femme aesthetic, the best way to be lesbian was to be rich, white, and fashionably dressed." It's at this point we should like to consider the feminizing of this most iconic aspect of menswear. Throughout the series, Villanelle is repeatedly portrayed sporting a 2- or 3-piece suit. Now, the popularizing of mannish suits is nothing new throughout the 20th and 21st century, but what makes this trend different here is the range of styles seen from a reconfiguring of the classic grey baggy men's cut through dark pattern cinch waist to a much softer asymmetric cut jacket with floral flowing lines, all found in one place. Returning to Dietrich's wardrobe, as seen in von Sternberg's Morocco or Garnett's Seven Sisters, the wearing of such suits could be connoted as having appropriated sites of patriarchal phallic power and privilege, seen here as military might or as the seductive charm of the upper-class Lothario. These aspects are echoed by the suit-wearing Villanelle, seen here in flaneur-like mode strolling through the Berlin club scene, who pits her wit against the international intelligence agencies, or who, despite having Eve as the constant object of her affection, is ever flirtatious with an array of other women. And whilst the hands in pocket stance carries unmistakable butch symbolism, the tension that's created on the bottom button of the jacket, with it being done up, it serves to accentuate the waist and the line of the hip, simultaneously providing a more feminized look, a queering of the stereotype. As suggested by the tight-fitting waistcoat, flowing line and soft fabric of the trouser, and costume jewellery worn here by Dietrich, a further example of the subversion of the suit can be appreciated in contrasting images of Villanelle, where the cut of the garment and the demeanour of the artist produce diverse images and performances, suggesting a fluidity around gender and sexuality. Angular, pointy and posed, or jacket unbuttoned, hair flowing freely or slicked back, hands thrust in pockets, a butch femme dynamic enacted by the same character.
The self-conscious referencing of the interplay of the butch femme aesthetic within a singular instance of costuming creates a disruptive image which enables the eroticism of androgyny to be flaunted. As with Helmut Newton's 1975 iconic image for French Vogue of Yves Saint Laurent's 1966 Le Smoking, Villanelle's costuming contrasts mannish tailoring and soft translucent fabrics which draw attention to the body beneath the blouse. While there are endless parallels that can be made between Villanelle's costuming and iconic screen styles, we are also particularly drawn to the reoccurring motif of the pocket, which pervades the butch femme styling of Villanelle. The pocket, as a utilitarian characteristic of menswear, is something often absent or rendered so perfunctory to be almost useless in many women's wear. The volume and space afforded by large pockets enables a performance dominated by swagger, a confidence and an ease centering on the intersection of body and clothes. Stereotypically, the bold trouser pocket stance draws attention to the groin, constructing and asserting a mythic, potent phallic power. Yet if one returns to Sue Harper's seminal work on costuming of Gainsborough melodramas, the pocket could be read as a more complex visual signifier. Within these feminine narratives, the spectacular aspects of mise-en-scène are foregrounded to enable a focus upon feelings and passion. Concealed fastenings and a plethora of pleats and folds, hidden centres and vortexes offer stylised gentle symbolism. In Killing Eve, the confident placement, thrusting hand, and lingering fingers which are enveloped by the opening of the pocket offer potent sexual cues. As Barbara Berman and Ariane Fenito discuss in their recent book, The Pocket, the women's pocket historically appeared as a separate tie-on garment, which gave it a proximity both to the skin and the pelvis, furthering its sexual overtones. The opening of the pocket is both hidden and suggestively revealed, becoming strongly evocative of female genitalia, particularly when it is gaping. Underneath the vulval layers of fabric, the body resides, and the pocket becomes a liminal space on the threshold of pleasure. Where the pocket and layers and folds of the suit can be seen to create an intimate sexual symbolism, the gender play with the butch femme within Villanelle's costuming is further complicated and queered through the Hussein Shahlan suit, showcased as part of both the Spring-Summer 2019 women's wear and menswear collections. The suit sold out in the menswear sections of online retailers. Where several of Villanelle's other suits hug and highlight her silhouette as women's wear, the oversized grey suit jacket contrasts with the 80s power suits that were worn with heels and huge hair. Instead, Villanelle's hair is swept back, the trousers baggy and the boots sensible. She seemingly becomes the embodiment of the butch lesbian clone. The man's suit, as Anne Hollander discusses, enables the figure to be recut into an ideal, where the nude is even more natural when dressed. In turn, Villanelle's pinstripe grey suit simultaneously presents us with an archetypal image of masculine power. The bulky shoulders reconstruct her body, with the volume drawing attention to her lithe frame. In the fight scene captured here, and as she bears down on Eve, we can appreciate the phallic power of the shoulder. Foregrounded in this display of brute force, with the angle of the bungee being reminiscent of a knife being held to the throat, the costuming is both connected to and overwhelms the body. Here we find echoes of the butch femme dynamic and also of something altogether more sinister, that of patriarchal oppression. The costume is intrusive, brutal and dominating, speaking for the complexities of gendered power, violence and passion. Villanelle appropriates menswear as a new skin to recast herself as ever more powerful and sexually assertive. Her image becomes one in which clothing, desire and power seemingly operates to simultaneously destabilise, play with and comment upon gendered roles.
Having discussed queer appropriations of the suit, it would be remiss of us not to consider Villanelle's vastly varied costuming through a camp lens. Since, as Susan Sontag declared, the essence of camp is its love of the unnatural, of artifice and exaggeration. And this statement could so easily have been made about the subject under discussion here. But let's diversify this concept further, suggesting that the series contains examples of lesbian camp built typically around butch femme binaries, and which Ellie Jean Nielsen observes commonly follows three themes: erotic, classic, and radical. Or perhaps it is more accurate to say that Villanelle's portrayal and performance can be read as dyke camp. Michaela Clements arguing that this manifestation of camp creates an artificial physicality rooted in swagger, in cockiness, drawing from a strong and developed sense of the multiplicity of lesbian identities.
So to conclude, while destabilising and queering gender through costume, Villanelle is not simply constructed and stereotyped as the lesbian killer. The cross-media discourses overwhelmingly centre on her fashionability, rather than conflating sexuality and costuming. Whilst evoking a stylistic history of butch femme and androgynous aesthetics, Villanelle's costuming is countered by looks which not only construct her as hyper-femme, but draw attention to the very processes of performance, dressing up and the instability of identities. The looks offer a lesbian camp parody of the butch femme aesthetic. There is a playful giddiness that pervades both Villanelle's costuming and her performance. Exaggeration and artifice pervade the costuming in ways that draw attention to the very codes of femininity, being nothing more than surface appearances. Garments through their excess become not just fashion moments, but witty, ironic plays with gender and sexuality. Her clothes constantly draw attention to themselves, whether floating, furry, or patterned. Whether too big or too small, enveloping or figure-hugging, Villanelle appears like a child raiding a dressing-up box. Despite being a killer, a beautiful monster, the increasing focus on emotion, love, and a quest for belonging renders her safe. Her appearances are revealed as a vulnerable facade. Thank you from both of us, and we look forward to discussing this paper further at and beyond the conference. Bye.
Bye.